And so today's session is called From Earning Your Worth to Choosing Your Life. And I specifically chose that. This isn't about my story. Um, you can follow along in my post for that. This is really about how I started to understand what was happening, and the way I was wired, why I was wired that way, and the things that have really given me new perspective, not only on achievement, but on life. And about 15 months ago, 18 months ago now, I don't even know anymore. Um, and this is shared. I left a job that was really meaningful to me, but what happened in that space, in that liminal space between now and then, is I felt this freedom to rest, to parent, to choose a job that works for me. Um, and that freedom feels like power. And that's the thing that I wish I could just, man, I wish I could just give everyone who's ever been in a situation where they feel trapped by their identity or by their association with achievement. And so today is going to start to talk through that, and start to um, provide some perspective on how you, if you're sitting there feeling trapped in something that's supposed to be good, can start to find your own power. And so, first, I want to talk about the definition of a high achiever, and I'm actually going to just read it. So I think it's powerful, and it's not my perspective. This is true definition. So, a high achiever is an individual who consistently sets ambitious goals, puts in the effort required to meet them, and surpasses average performance standards. They are primarily driven by continuous self-improvement, a strong sense of personal responsibility, and a focus on long-term growth rather than perfection. They have defining characteristics of being goal-oriented, highly conscientious, growth mindset, having self-awareness, and being continuous learners. And I think most of us can identify with some of those things in our life. And when you heard that, you probably had associated that with good, right? I thought high achievement is good. Now let me read the definition of overachiever, which, if you are a high achiever and you've ever been told you're an overachiever, that, at least for me, never landed well. I never liked that framing of it, but an overachiever is driven by underlying fear of failure or the need to constantly prove their self-worth. They often tie their identity to perfectionism, struggle with boundaries, and can be prone to burnout. Guilty. Guilty as charged. And what I really want to spend the next 20 to 30 minutes, I won't make this too long, is talking about that fine line between where achievement is really positive and good thing in our life and a gift that we have that we get to go and bring to the world and how we show up, and where achievement becomes overachievement and where pursuit becomes something we're using to feel good about ourselves, and to prove ourselves and to earn our worth. And so that's where we're going to spend our time today. And aside from the definition, where I want to start is, how do we get here? Why are we wired the way we're wired? Um, and I'm not a psychologist, so I'm going to just clarify that up front. And I'm sure there are resources, and I actually have a book I'll recommend if you want to learn more on any of this. This is my own research and kind of applying back to my own life. But to understand why we feel pressure to constantly be moving, to constantly be achieving, we have to go all the way back to our childhood. And I understand for some of us that can be uncomfortable. But what we know true about how identity forms in childhood is based on we are biologically programmed towards attachment, which simply means that we want to feel safe, we want to feel protected, and we will do anything in our power to do that as children. And so our identity forms around what gave us praise, what gave us comfort, what allowed us to feel part of a group, are the traits that we kind of inherited as our identity. And the things that were shut down, the things that weren't recognized, the things that maybe weren't accepted in your school or your sport or your home, Those are what we now internalize as shame. And so if we go back to many of us, or at least for me, born in the late 80s, really a part of one of the older millennials, we're really the first generation where the parenting philosophy started to shift to one of external achievement, right? We're the first generation where college, there wasn't a question really if we would go to college. Like that was the end target of school. We were the first generation where sports became more than hobbies. We were the first generation where resume mattered as a child, and where boredom started to disappear. And obviously, the generations that now come behind us have had even more extreme versions of that. But we were the start of the shift of it. And again, I'm not an expert in this, but I do want to recommend one book. The book is called Can't Even, and it's called How Millennials Became the Burnout Generation by Ann Helen Peterson. And that book really goes into the history not only of our parents' generation, but our parents' generation, and how this shift happened. Give me one moment. My computer just shut down. That's not ideal. Stand by. Okay, I think we're back. Sorry about that. But our parents' generation. So that book really helped me understand how again identity formed. But so if we take that, let's just kind of re-anchor to it. The things that we were praised for, the things that became our identity. So for me and for many of us, that was external achievement, that was grit, that was hard work. In some cases, that was even pain. And the things that were ridiculed or not allowed became functions of shame. So being told to sit down in a sports practice. We now feel that as shame when we are try to rest or we're lazy, or being not getting a good grade on something. We now internalize that as shame, and we shy away when someone confronts us with feedback about work we've done. So all of that ties all the way back to the very beginning. And the other thing I want to note on that is I love my parents, right? We all love our parents. There was so much good intention in the stories we were told, right? My grandparents were hardworking, construction, bank teller, and my parents in the same. My dad came from the oil field, and really they just wanted a better life. We all want better lives for our children, and we parent based on what we know. And so even though there was good intention, we get to sit with that and decide if that's the story we want to live moving forward, and if that's the story we want our children to have. Although we will probably screw them up in a different way. But like I said, we do the best we can with the information we know. So we have the psychological makeup that's wired towards achievement, external achievement, hard work, grit, discipline. And then in the late, call it 90s, early 2000s, the media really glamorized what I like to call the inspirational sports movie. And I love an inspirational sports movie. I mean, Rocky, Remember the Titans, Miracle, Coach Carter, name them. I think one summer I watched all of them. But the message in those movies is work harder, go faster, do more. It's all built around this pursuit of this external achievement in something. And I don't know about you, but I wanted nothing more than to be the comeback kid. And maybe I didn't say that out loud. Maybe I couldn't externally express that, but I wanted what those teens were feeling was something that I wanted. And so I have this psychological makeup, this particular psychological makeup, and now I believe in this story of pursuit and the glamour of pursuit. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. It is so fun to have a goal and to go hard at that goal and to be a part of a team like that. I mean, some of the best moments of my life have been that, both in work and in sport. But the problem is when you run that story for decades on end, what does it feel like? What does it feel like? It doesn't feel good. Because what those stories don't say, don't prove, and that we actually know is scientifically true, it's not the point of this session, this 30 minutes, is our bodies need rest. It is scientifically proven that our bodies need rest. And if you look at the most elite in the world, athletes, professionals, they are resting. I actually saw something, and I did not source check or validate, so I don't know if this is true, but that Taylor Swift's entire Eras tour, which grossed billions, was planned around her ability to be home during the week so that she could recover. And she broke rules, like she turned down cities, she prioritized her ability to rest so that she could perform. And those stories don't tell that. And so that wasn't wired into, at least for me, the mentality. It was just go hard, always, right? And when you run that story for a decade, because rest feels like shame, because not chasing the next external run feels like complacency, you end up in a spot probably where maybe where you are today. Sorry, my computer continues to close. I guess I'll have to keep wiggling my mouse. I apologize for the technical difficulties. And then you start compounding everything else that's real in our lives today. The social media, the changing gender roles, political unrest, pandemics, this concept of being always on, right? For work, we have notifications coming everywhere. We're raising kids to try to change the generational standards, right? It's not just, hey, go play in the yard. Like, it's all heavy and it's a lot. And for me, I felt trapped. I felt exhausted. I felt paralyzed. I felt like I was never keeping up. I felt like my brain stopped working, and my brain is my moneymaker. And that was a really scary thing, because here's the key. If you are an achiever who rides the line between being a high achiever and an overachiever, our nervous systems are wired and are fried from the very things that our identities are built upon. So think about that. The constantly on, the hard work is the grit, all of these things that our identities are tied to because of what we just talked about are also what allows us not to turn off, allows us not to rest, and fries our nervous system. We're burnout as a generation. And so we crave this rest and this peace, and we talk about balance, and like we say we're going to take a week off of work and disconnect, and we use all these words because our bodies and our nervous systems are craving to turn off, but it feels unreachable. And it feels unreachable for several reasons. And for, in some instance of my life, it felt unreachable because I felt like I owed it to other people to keep showing up. I didn't want to disappoint people. In some instances of my life, that rest and that peace felt unreachable because I felt like I had responsibilities to my family. And in the very worst instance of my life, that rest felt unreachable because I didn't have the mental capacity to do anything but put one foot in front of the other. And I was on a treadmill and I was running fast and it looked amazing from the outside, but I didn't actually have the mental brain capacity to stop and be like, is this what I really want? And there's going to be a breaking point. And for some of us, that breaking point could be retirement. For some of us, it could be a medical or natural trauma. For some of us, it could be an intentional job change or burnout. but eventually our bodies are going to force us to step away. And so we have story one about achievement that I just talked through. Go hard, be Rocky, like running up the stairs, dun, 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 all the things, right? And then we hit this point. And then story two that we've been told about achievement becomes really sexy. Because story two says, quit your job, put your feet in the grass, maybe live off the land. And look, this story is not wrong. Okay, good. I love slow mornings. I love walking around barefoot. I have taken not one, but 2 one-year sabbaticals away from work. Story two is not bad. But the thing that story two does in its entirety, and the reason it hasn't worked, at least for me, for long periods of time, is it asks us to reject the very thing that makes us feel alive. It tells us to reject achievement. Hey, if you want this peace and this mind, you need to be out here and you need to let that go. And like I just mentioned, how do I want to say that? The most I felt alive is in moments of pursuit. And I felt alive in other moments too. But I'd have this space, and that space would be really good for me. And then I'd crave something. And that story would die out, because we don't actually want to stop achieving. We just want to stop losing ourselves in the achievement. And that's where, the whole premise of everything I'm doing, and it's taken me a while to like find what this is and narrow it down, is there's a third story about achievement. And that story is one where we choose achievement, not where we use it to earn our worth. Right? There's a story where we choose to achieve when we want and the way we want. And we choose to rest, or we choose to take our kids to the park. We choose to play. And that is, I think, the missing story of our generation, and the one that we are going to have to create, because no one's coming to save us. No one is going to make the hard decision for you. You are going to have to make the hard decision for yourself and for your children, because the way you are living your life and the systems you are creating are the same systems that our children, that the generations of achievers behind us are going to live in. And this may make some sense theoretically, but you're like, I don't know. I mean, what do you mean by choose achievement? What do you mean by like choose rest? Like, I don't really understand how this applies to the intense tension I feel in my chest on Monday morning when my to-do list is longer than there are hours in the week. Well, before you kind of just step away and think that I'm just being theoretical, let me just read some questions. And when I want you to think about these questions, like really think about these questions, and they're rhetorical. I don't want answers. But the questions that I have for you, start to poke at what is your relationship with achievement, and are you really okay? So if I told you won the lottery, whatever, today is your last day at work, you don't have to go back to work tomorrow and you're going to be fine, what do you feel? Like, truly, what do you feel? I mean, everyone wants to win the lottery. Because the thing that I felt when that day finally came was relief. So if you would feel relieved, that's a sign the story you're in may not be your own anymore. How many meals a day do you eat from your computer? If you were caught in the gym at 11 a.m. on a Tuesday, would you feel guilty? When you think about your next job, do you worry more about whether it looks like a step upward than whether you actually like it? Do you feel guilty when you sleep in? Does playing with your kids feel unproductive? And if some of those hit harder than expected, and you're like, oh wow, Amanda's in my head, here's how we can actually change it. Here's the pivot. We were told the old stories of achievement, and now we get to write the new one. And we're the only ones who can write the new one. So how do we do that? And I wish I could tell you that going from using achievement to earn your worth versus choosing your life. I wish I could tell you that all you had to do was wake up at 4 a.m., run 5 miles, work 11 hours, eat whole foods, drink 3 liters of water, track your sleep, because that would be easy for us, right? Like the way we define hard is different than the way other people define hard. But for us to change the narrative, it's actually 2 things. 1, simpler than that. 2, it's hard for us because it requires us to be still. It requires us to be still enough and brave enough to listen to what's underneath the noise until we believe that we're enough without everything we do. And that takes time, and it's a winding process, and it doesn't have an end, and there's not a mountain to climb. To change our relationship with achievement, we have to stop achieving for a second. And therein lies the dilemma for every overachiever. But as someone who has fought through that stillness and who has taken the time to unwind the decades of rhythms and routines and cultural elements of my life that the systems of achievement have taught me. Oh, I didn't say change myself. I am still wired to be an achiever. And that is going to be my greatest gift, has been, and will continue to be. But it's also not going to run my life. So as someone who has fought through that over the last 5 years, and specifically over the last year, I want to close this this session with the one exercise that kind of started it all for me and helped open my eyes. And you'll hear this exercise called the eulogy exercise, the tombstone exercise. It does come from roots in both the work of Stephen Covey and Dr. Jim Loehr. And they had different perspectives on slightly different takes on it. And I even added my own spin. This is what works for me. But I do this every January, but you can do it. It's May 29th. You can do it on May 29th. If you have something to write with, that's great. I think about at the end of my life, and again, you have to be in the space to be able to think about the end of your life. Who do I want in the room, like actually in the room holding my hand? Who do I want in the surrounding area? Who do I want at my celebration of life? And what do I want them to say about me and about our experiences and about our time together? And this exercise for me it takes me a long time. And especially the first time I did it in 2017. So it's been almost 9 years of doing this exercise. It took me a long time to stop. Let's just say every year, my answer to those questions got deeper and deeper. It stopped being like, oh, I want my kids to say I'm present. And then I'd say that and I was like, not actually present in their life. Or I want, whatever the things we just say, but really sitting and thinking about that moment. And then as you write those things down, and for me, I do it by groups. So I say, what do I want? My family will be in the room. What do I want my family to say about me? And then I go to my friends. What do I want my friends to say about me? And then my work life, my coworkers. And I work and operate in a way where my coworkers tend to be more than just coworkers. And then broader than that, like this year on my card, it's what do I want the audience of the Truth About Achievement or Built for More to say about me? And they're all slightly different, but they're intentional. And that's step one of the exercise. Step two of the exercise is write down, and perhaps the most important part of the exercise, what are the things that you need to do in your life on a regular basis? It could be daily, it could be weekly, it could be monthly, but probably no longer than monthly, to make that true. And I have all my cards here, all 9 years worth, and I can look back and see what those things were. So let me just share some from 2018 so you can get to 2018 here. To frame that life, I didn't have children. I was not yet. I had just met my now husband, and I was working as a senior consultant or a manager in a consulting firm at Credit. So what did I say? I said, I want my family to say that I'm loving, strong, and balanced. My friends to say that I'm authentic and dependable. I want work to say that I'm trustworthy. And I want just the general people around me to say that I'm authentic, hardworking, and humble. And then I break down. So for my family to say that, I need to eat dinner with Mark at least 3 nights a week. And at the time, that was a stretch because I was working a lot and often ate in front of my computer at work. Pre-COVID, so working from home wasn't a thing. Surprise him 2 times a month because I know that acts of service is his love language. Mark is my partner, by the way, my now husband. Reach out to my friend, won't name her here, at least 1 time a month to get one-on-one time, and then call my mom 4 times a week. And so they're very specific things. And if you looked at this list without the context of what they meant, it would be hard to see that vision. It'd be hard to see that these things I'm doing are going to create that outcome. But they are what I felt at the time I needed to do to move myself in that direction. And so this exercise, again, I have 9 years worth of cards, something I do every year. And the reason that it helps me is outside of that, maybe 1 or 2 days a year when I can connect to the bigger vision of what it will be meaningful in my life. These daily tasks, I can look at them on my mirror and I can understand, okay, I'm on the right track, or no, I'm not, because I didn't do any of those things. I let life and work and deadlines override everything I said I was going to do. And it helps hold me accountable to not only thinking and saying what is important to me, but actually living it. And then the beautiful thing that's happened over time is reshaped my entire definition of success. And it's allowed me to contextualize the external validation and external milestones in a way, I don't want to say that make them less important because they're important, but in a way that keeps them in context of the bigger picture. And so that is a little bit more about the premise of the Truth About Achievement, but also hopefully helps you understand your own relationship with achievement and gives you a powerful tool, and 9 years, first tool to help you stop feeling like you need to earn your worth. When you can stop feeling that way, you can truly choose your life. Have a great Friday. Have a great weekend. And do something just for the heck of it in the next few days. All right. Thanks all. Bye.